You just need to hold them off for 5 minutes. We'll come back for you." But the helicopter lifted the moment she charged forward. Amid smoke and gunfire, the female SEAL realized she'd been left behind. The retreat order was a setup. A year later, during a classified briefing, the commander's K9 suddenly broke free, barking at the woman emerging from the shadows. The entire team froze. The soldier they'd betrayed had returned, and this time, she was the one giving orders. The desert night was thick with dust and the crack of automatic weapons. Isla Hale pressed her back against a crumbling mud wall, the heat of the barrel still burning through her gloves. She counted the seconds between muzzle flashes, her breath steady even as rounds chipped the brick inches from her helmet. Kai Vance's voice had crackled in her earpiece just minutes earlier, calm, clipped, final. 5 minutes. That was the deal. She'd bought them the time, taken out the machine gun nest on the ridge, given the team a clear path to the extraction point. And then the rotors spun up. She saw the black silhouette rise, saw Dante Cruz's silhouette in the open door, his hand reaching out for a second before the bird banked hard and vanished into the smoke. No rope, no second pass, just the fading thump of blades and the sudden crushing silence of being alone. The silence was immediately shattered by a new concussive sound. Not gunfire, but the rapid stuttering ignition of a small directional charge placed 30 yards down the trail she had just cleared for the retreat. The flash was blinding, momentarily illuminating 2 figures sprinting away from the blast zone in the opposite direction of the helicopter's ascent. Isla didn't need to see the figures clearly. The timing was too perfect, the charge too professional. It wasn't the enemy trying to stop the extraction. It was her own team ensuring the trail was sealed immediately after they passed through, guaranteeing she was trapped between the explosion and the converging hostile forces. The malicious finality of the act, the planned sabotage of her survival, hit her harder than any bullet, transforming her shock into a burning, ice-cold clarity of purpose. She pushed away from the wall, the need to survive now fully eclipsed by the requirement for retribution. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She dropped the empty magazine, slapped in a fresh one, and started moving. Every step was deliberate, every shadow a potential threat. The enemy was closing in, voices shouting in a language she understood well enough to know they were hunting. She slipped through a drainage ditch, mud sucking at her boots, and kept low until the voices faded behind her. Hours later, when the sun came up, brutal and white, she was still walking. Her canteen was dry. In a dry wash just before dawn, she found it lodged under a brittle piece of scrub brush, a custom-made ballistic elbow pad, a relic of their tight-knit unit. It wasn't a piece of disposable field gear. It was personalized, Kevlar-stitched, and unmistakable. It belonged to Liam, their designated gear master. The heel-sized scuff mark on its surface told the story. It had been deliberately kicked there, perhaps to make the weight limit, or simply to clear the cabin during the hasty departure. This wasn't a panicked retreat that resulted in a forgotten comrade. This was a deliberate sweep to ensure no traceable equipment linked her to them, confirming they had not just abandoned her, but had actively and systematically erased her presence before taking off. She picked it up, feeling the cool, expensive polymer, and tossed it into the swirling dust, without a flicker of expression, cementing the fact that her death had been signed and sealed long before the rotors even started turning. Her radio was dead. The only thing louder than the wind was the memory of Kai's voice promising they'd come back. Back at base, the report was simple. SEAL Team Echo had encountered heavy resistance. One operator unaccounted for presumed KIA. Kai signed the paperwork himself, his pen moving across the page without hesitation. Dante stood behind him in the briefing room, arms crossed tight, staring at the floor. Nobody asked questions. Days later, back in North Carolina, the remnants of Echo Team gathered in a dimly lit rec room, a single bottle of cheap whiskey on a folding table where Isla's designated spot remained empty. Kai led a hollow, perfunctory toast, raising his cup to "Hail a warrior lost in the fight," his eyes already scanning the room for who would finish the bottle first. Dante watched the entire ritual from the corner, his jaw muscles twitching visibly as the men clinked cups. When one younger team member genuinely choked up, Kai slapped him on the back with a brutal force that made the man gasp, his voice a low, hard hiss that cut through the room. "We did our job. Get a grip, Ensign. Grieving is a liability we can't afford. She's a statistic now. Move on." Dante flinched at the cruelty, but his boots remained glued to the floor, his silence a profound admission of his complicity. Nobody wanted to. The mission had succeeded. That was enough. They packed up their gear, boarded the transport, and flew home. Isla Hale became a name on a memorial wall, a closed file, a story they'd tell over beers someday about the one they couldn't save. But Isla didn't die. She walked for 3 days with no food, sipping water from puddles. She boiled over a tiny fire made from scrap wood. She evaded patrols, slept in culverts, and kept moving west until she hit a supply route used by local militias. She traded her watch for a ride in the back of a produce truck hidden under crates of oranges. The driver never asked her name. She didn't offer it. When the truck stopped at a checkpoint, she slipped out, melted into the crowd, and kept going. She crossed borders on foot-forged papers with a pen and a stolen ID, and learned to disappear so completely that even the satellites couldn't find her. 6 months later, she sat in a safe house in Istanbul, hair cropped short, wearing clothes that had seen better days. A man across the table slid a folder toward her. Inside were satellite images, intercepted comms names of double agents embedded in Western intelligence. He spoke softly in accented English. "We've been watching you, Lieutenant Hale. You're wasted on them." She didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She just opened the folder and started reading. Over the next 6 months, the man codenamed Azadi oversaw her total metamorphosis, replacing battlefield reflexes with surgical precision. She spent weeks locked in a repurposed shipping container, navigating complex satellite relays and jamming military-grade encryption systems, emerging only when she could bypass a level 5 firewall in under 30 seconds. Her physical training shifted from brute force to controlled silent infiltration. She learned to pick locks with dental tools, move across pressure-sensitive floors without registering a single ounce of weight, and speak 5 new dialects of regional Arabic and Slavic languages with native fluency. Azadi's final test was a week-long simulation where she had to convince a team of professional interrogators that she was a low-level diplomatic courier from a non-existent European state, maintaining the flawless cover, even under simulated duress, a feat that required dissolving her former identity until even her own posture seemed foreign. By the time she closed it, she'd already memorized the key details. She took the job, not for revenge, not yet, for leverage. A year after the desert, the briefing room at Langley was packed. High-ranking officers, analysts, a few spooks in suits that cost more than most people's cars. Kai Vance stood at the podium, clicking through slides about a new joint operation. Dante Cruz leaned against the back wall, arms folded, eyes on the screen, but not really seeing it. The K-9, a big Malinois named Rex, sat obediently at the handler's feet. The lights dimmed for the next slide. Meanwhile, in the server room, 3 floors down, a tiny customized device Isla had pre-planted during a routine facility tour weeks prior completed its sequence. It didn't just disable the communication lines, it executed a complex multi-stage attack. First, it rerouted the local area network, creating a phantom partition that made all active security monitors and panic buttons report a system-wide all clear. Second, it injected a custom thermal override into the HVAC controls for the briefing room, subtly dropping the ambient temperature just enough to make the occupants slightly irritable, distracted, and subconsciously eager for the meeting to end. The third and most critical step was the momentary surge it sent through the main projector's USB port, guaranteeing that the flash drive she carried would be granted temporary, unquestioned administrative privileges over the network once plugged in. And then Rex bolted. The handler lunged for the leash, but the dog was already across the room, barking like he'd seen a ghost. Every head turned. The door had opened without a sound. Isla stepped into the light. Same height, same build, but different. Her hair was longer now, pulled back in a tight knot. She wore a plain black jacket, no insignia, no makeup. Her boots were scuffed. She looked like someone who'd walked out of a war zone and never bothered to change. Rex sat in front of her tail, thumping, whining like a puppy. She ignored the frozen stares of the generals, her focus locked on Kai Vance. Rex, still vibrating with nervous energy, pressed his large head against her hip. Isla knelt smoothly, her movements economical, and spoke 2 words to the Malinois in a low tone that was utterly distinct from the tone she used with the rest of the room, "Heel, Commander." The dog instantly silenced, turning its attention from Isla to Kai, sitting upright and pointing its nose directly at the seated commander, its loyalty abruptly and publicly transferred. The simple silent action, Rex's immediate obedience to her, was a devastating public stripping of Kai's authority, and the ultimate animal confirmation of his moral failure, driving a knife deep into the command structure before a single word of intel was even uttered. She scratched his ears. Once then looked up. The room went dead quiet. Kai's mouth opened closed. Dante took a step forward, then stopped. Someone in the back dropped a pen. It clattered loud enough to make half the room jump. Isla didn't wait for permission. She walked to the front, pulled a flash drive from her pocket, and plugged it into the projector. The screen lit up with a map. Red dots marked locations across 3 continents. Lines connected them like a web. She clicked to the next slide. Photos, documents, audio files. Audio. A voice everyone in the room recognized Kai's giving orders that didn't match the official record. A young man in a freshly pressed Air Force uniform, an aide to a 3-star general, pushed his chair back, attempting to speak over the recording. "Ma'am, I need to see your access credentials and remove that unauthorized device immediately." His hand moved toward the connection panel. Isla didn't turn her head, but her voice sliced through the tension, addressing the entire room. "Major, if I am removed before I finish the data on the next slide, the real-time disposition of the 5 Houthi cells currently targeting the Red Sea traffic you're ignoring goes live to every journalist covering this room. Your general has an appointment with the chairman in 90 minutes. Would you like to be the reason he arrives empty-handed?" The aide's hand froze midair, and he slowly, carefully retracted it, sinking back into his chair, confirming her intelligence and her lethal, instantaneous leverage. She let it play for 10 seconds. Then she stopped it. "This is what I've been doing," she said. Her voice was low, steady, the kind of calm that comes after you've already survived the worst. "While you wrote me off, I built something better." She clicked again. A list of agencies, MI6, DGSE, Mossad, names that made the suits shift in their seats. They listen to me now. "You don't get to move without my say-so." Kai found his voice. "Hail. You're supposed to be." She reached into her jacket and didn't produce another flash drive, but instead pulled out a small metallic object, no bigger than a cigarette lighter, and dropped it with a sharp echoing clank onto the polished mahogany table directly in front of General Peterson. It was a custom-issued encrypted satellite phone standard kit for a high-risk mission leader, but this one was split clean. Down the middle, the circuit board scorched and etched crudely onto the casing, was the number 4 Isla's call sign. That she stated pointing to the burned wreckage is the actual unretrieved piece of evidence you should have secured. I found it 30 yards from the extraction point, blown apart by a directional charge, the exact kind you requested for. Emergency route denial, Commander Vance. The implication was a visible gut punch to Kai, connecting his official action request directly to the physical sabotage that had almost killed her. Dead. She tilted her head. "Yeah, I heard." She clicked to a photo. It was grainy, taken from a drone. A body in the desert, face-down gear, stripped. "That's not me." "But you didn't check, did you?" She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The room was already hers. Dante pushed off the wall. "Isla, we thought, you didn't think." She looked at him for the first time. Not angry, just tired. "You followed orders. I get it." She turned back to the screen. She clicked to a slide that displayed a heavily redacted mission, manifest from 6 weeks before the betrayal. The hidden text now visible revealed a name, Project Nightingale, and an additional line item under extraction priorities that read, "High-value asset exfil K. Vance will utilize our Hail EXP as primary diversionary element to ensure clear corridor for transport." The general leaned forward, squinting. "Hail explain EXP." Isla met his gaze evenly. "Expendable?" "This wasn't a snap decision to cut losses, General. This was the plan when we shook hands at the start line. You signed off on me being a designated distraction, ensuring your asset, the one who could compromise your entire South Asian network, got a clean escape at the cost of my life." The calculated coldness of the institutional betrayal hung heavy in the air, a far worse crime than panic. But orders don't bring people back, and they don't erase what you did. The general at the head table cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Hale, if this is some kind of... It's not a stunt." She pulled a folder from her bag, slid it across the table. "That's the intel you need for the next op. Without it, you're blind. With it, you might actually win." She paused, but it comes through me, my network, my rules. Kai's face was red now. You can't just walk in here, and I already did. She unplugged the drive, slipped it into her pocket. And I'm not asking? She looked around the room, meeting eyes one by one. Some looked away, some couldn't. As she stepped back from the podium, she placed both hands flat on the glass top, a momentary pause that drew every eye. Then she pushed off, and the monitors across the room, the ones displaying stock quotes, satellite feeds, and intelligence summaries, all simultaneously flashed a single customized error: message system, access revoked, status offline. The action lasted barely a second before the monitors reverted to their original state, but the message had been delivered. She had just proven she could disable and re-enable their secure network on a whim, confirming the terrifying scope of her newfound power, and cementing the fact that her influence was not just digital, but systemic. You want to work with me? You treat me like I never left. You want to pretend I'm still a ghost? Keep pretending. See how far that gets you. She walked out the same way she came in. No drama, no goodbye. Just the click of her boots on the tile and the door closing behind her. Rex whined once, then lay down like nothing had happened. The fallout started slow. First the whispers, then the emails. Someone leaked the audio file to a defense blog. By morning, it was everywhere. Kai's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Dante stopped answering his. The general called an emergency review. Careers hung in the balance. The consequence for Dante was swift and deeply personal. 3 weeks after the briefing, he arrived at his command post to find his badge. Access revoked, the electronic lock on his office door, replaced by a newly installed military-grade padlock, and 2 junior lieutenant's men he had personally mentored and trained to execute missions without questioning orders standing guard. One of them, a fresh-faced officer named Torres, avoided his gaze, but the other Lieutenant Commander Royce held his stare with a cold professional disappointment. Royce held out a sealed plastic bag containing Dante's personal sidearm and his unit patch. Commander Cruz, your clearance has been downgraded to Tier 1. Per Directive 904, all secure facility access and classified materials are restricted immediately. You are to report to admin for asset sign-out. Have a good day, sir. The dismissal, delivered with sterile official contempt by the very men he'd taught to revere the chain of command, was a definitive public execution of his career and reputation. Sponsorships dried up. Invites to briefings stopped coming. One by one, the people who'd signed off on leaving her behind found themselves on the outside looking in. Isla didn't watch the news. She didn't need to. She was in Prague, then Berlin, then a safe house in Cyprus. She met with generals who saluted her. She turned down offers from private contractors who wanted to buy her network. She kept moving, kept building, kept quiet. 8 months later, Kai showed up at a cafe in Lisbon. He looked older, thinner. He slid into the chair across from her without asking. I was wrong, he said. No preamble, no excuses. I should have gone back. Isla stirred her coffee. You didn't. I know. He looked at his hands. They're cutting me loose. Early retirement. Dante too. He hesitated. We're sorry. She nodded once. I heard. He waited for more. She didn't give it. After a minute, he stood up. The instant Kai Vance turned his back and walked away from the outdoor table, Isla moved with a speed that defied the relaxed atmosphere of the cafe. Her eyes didn't follow him, but instead tracked a middle-aged woman sitting 3 tables away, ostensibly reading a newspaper. Isla picked up the salt shaker, its base slightly sticky with spilled sugar, and casually dropped it into her own empty teacup with a tiny, sharp clink. The woman at the other table immediately folded her newspaper, left a single euro coin, and walked briskly away in the opposite direction Kai had taken. Isla's interaction with her former commander had been nothing more than a carefully orchestrated dead drop, and signal exchange, the apology, and Kai's visible distress serving as flawless cover for an entirely separate operation, demonstrating that her emotional life had been completely subsumed by her professional detachedness. He left. Dante tried next. A letter, handwritten, left at a drop point. She read it in a hotel room in Marrakesh, then burned it in the sink. The words didn't matter. The apology was too late. The damage was done. The following week, Isla took a private jet to a remote, unlisted landing strip in the Swiss Alps. Azadi was waiting for her in a small, windowless cabin, pouring 2 cups of dark tea. He didn't ask about Kai or Dante, but simply placed a thick leather journal on the table between them, the final accounting of all the data she had extracted and all the institutional damage she had caused. Isla did not open it. She took a sip of the bitter tea, her eyes fixed on the distant, silent peaks. "The asset you wanted protected," she said, her voice a flat statement. "The one they betrayed me for. I ensured he was permanently silenced last night. The loose end is tied." Azadi looked at her, then a fleeting expression of something akin to paternal satisfaction crossing his face, and simply nodded. "Good," he replied. "The ghost has done its work." It was the closest she would ever come to acknowledging that the mission, personal or otherwise, was complete. The last time anyone saw Kai, he was teaching a survival course to civilians in Colorado. No more black ops, no more command. Just a man with a whistle and a clipboard, telling rich kids how to start a fire with a battery. Dante took a job with a private security firm in Africa. Smaller jobs, less glory. He sent her an email once. She didn't reply. Isla kept working. She stopped counting the countries. She stopped counting the lives saved. She just did the job. The one they said she couldn't. The one they left her to die for. Sometimes late at night she'd sit on a balcony somewhere with a view of water or mountains or nothing at all. She'd think about the desert, about the sound of rotors fading, about the weight of a promise broken. She didn't cry, she didn't rage, she just breathed and kept going. You've been there, haven't you? Looked down on, counted out, told you don't belong, told you're not enough, and you kept going anyway. Quiet, steady, one foot in front of the other. That's strength. That's real. You weren't wrong to believe in yourself. You weren't alone in the dark. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.